I'm going to begin with some definitions so that we're all talking about the same things, and you have these in your materials, but I'll throw them up on an overhead so you have an additional visual to go with it. When we discuss power, most of us mean this kind of power, positional power. That's what most of us are talking about. Positional power is the kind of power that comes to you as a result of your title and your placement in the hierarchy. So if we threw your organization chart up here and put your label on it, we would have the ability to identify your position of power. So if you're the CEO, if you're the chair of the department, if you are the head of the agency, if you're the director, if you're the whatever, a title tells us how much positional power you have in the organization we're looking at. It tells you that you have the ability, or you don't have the ability, to hire and fire and reward and punish. It's a more raw form of power. So it just simply says, I can promote you, I can give you another raise, I can fire you. I can tell you that you're doing a good job and it will mean a great deal to you, or I can give you some negative criticism or feedback, and that also will have a big impact because I have positional power. Positional power can also come as a result of expertise. So let's say that you aren't in a particularly high-profile position in the organization, but you happen to know more about a particular subject than anybody else in the system. That knowledge base gives you a great deal of positional power, even if it's only temporary, but it will give you positional power. The third form of positional power is having a lot of money. So when you have a lot of money, we should have all been in Oregon and tried to win the $340 million that somebody, one single person had. If that individual chooses to reveal their newfound wealth, they'll have a lot of positional power, more than they probably want. But money gives you positional power. So even if you're not inside an organization and you have a lot of money, you can have an impact on lots of organizations because of the money that you possess. Money is powerful. And sometimes it's used in a very positive, healthy manner, and sometimes it is not. So we look at significant financial means, expertise, and actually just your position in a hierarchy. For approximately 30 years, women have been told in management literature and in workshops like this is what you should want more of. Try to get more positional power, work in the direction of upward mobility, move yourself into positions where you have power. And the illusion, often not clarified with that, is an assumption, an elusive assumption, that if you get more positional power in your organization, you will be in, fill in the blank, control. The idea is that positional power gives you control, and the reality is that is not likely to be true. Now, one of the reasons it's not likely to be true is I don't think there is anything such as control. We believe in control. We get addicted to control, but I don't think there is such a thing as actually being in control, just the striving for. There is the ability to be in charge, and I will distinguish between those in a bit. So if people are pushing you and telling you to move towards having more positional power, and you want it, absolutely go for it. It's okay to go for it. But if you're after more positional power, make sure you understand with thoroughness the organization in which you want the power. Because you can get more positional power in an unhealthy system and simply get a larger headache than the one you have today. It just doesn't get you anything. There is a fairly famous management consultant whose name is Peter Block, and he wrote a book that is on one of your book lists called The Empowered Manager. And Peter talks about consulting to the CEO of a ketchup manufacturer. The CEO's complaint was, there's too much water in my ketchup, and no matter what I do, I can't get this amount of water reduced to where I want it. And he was expecting a kind of detailed system analysis of this. And Peter said to him, well, the deal is you're just the CEO of the company. The people who put the water in the ketchup are in control of where the water goes and in what amounts. So it's the people on the assembly line who are in control of how much water goes into the ketchup. It doesn't make any difference what you want. So that's the issue. The person at the top had no impact on the outcome of the product, at least not in terms of trying to tell people what to do. Can you do it differently? Can you approach it differently and make it change? Yes, as long as you know you have no control over it simply because you own the company. We have to understand the nature of the organization in which we have a position of power now or a position of relative power, and we have to always ask the right questions if we're thinking of moving up. Because lots of times people opt to not take that position of power. Is that legitimate? It sure is. And it needs to be determined based on your personal goals, your own interests, your own sense of direction and where you're going. So positional power to me is always a choice. I can choose to go after it, or I can choose not to go after it. There's another kind of power, though, that is not a choice. This is the most important kind of power for women. It's also the most important kind of power for men. Okay, personal power is totally different from positional power. And if you went to management literature, you'd see a very different definition. It would say something about your sense of presence, your charisma, your ability to be a force in a group of people or in an organization. My definition, it is the ability to create your own environment. The ability to create your own environment. You measure how much personal power you have by asking this question: who is in charge? Not who's in control. Who's in charge of the way your day goes? Who's in charge of the way the week is managed? Who's in charge of the way this year is unfolded? Do you know it's almost the end of November? And have you had the thought, how did it get to be the end of November? It's that sense of time passing, and it's the sense of being out of control. So who's in charge of all those aspects of life, and who's in charge of the direction your life is going? Is it you? Is it you enough of the time? Is it you hardly ever? Many years ago, I had a client. I work primarily with women and specialize in the psychology of women, so most of my examples are about women. But this woman said to me, it's my mother, it's my spouse, it's my 2-year-old, it's my 16-year-old, it's my boss, it's this friend of mine who annoys the out of me. And I feel as if they all get together sometime over the weekend and figure out an itinerary for my life and give it to me Sunday night. When you have that sensation, that means that things feel out of control. Other people are making the decisions in my life, about my life, and it's not me enough of the time. So when you have that feeling, what do you do? Anybody have a quick thought about what do you do when you feel out of control?
Rebel.
Scream, rebel. I sometimes whine a lot. What else comes to mind? Shut down, okay. Shut down and retreat.
Pray.
Pray. That would be a healthy one. What people have a tendency to do in organizations, if they have a little positional power, is they go into their office and try to write a new rules and procedures manual. Now, you do understand that, right? It's like, I can control these people. I will design a bunch of new boxes. I will get new descriptions of how and when they're supposed to do what I want them to do. Now, if you're at home and you have 2 or 3 kids and half of them are sort of loosely out of control, what do you do there? Set new rules, create new boundaries, make a new list of consequences. You know, get these people under control. And if it feels like you, if you're on the edge of your 3rd nervous breakdown this year, what do you have a tendency to do about yourself?
Neglect.
What?
You neglect yourself.
Neglect. That's absolutely accurate. Isn't that bizarre?
I go to a spa.
Well, but you're talking about health. You're talking about being a healthy person. Good for you.
1 hour when I can be myself and they can't tell me what to do.
Okay, she says she goes to a spa, which is a good thing. But what most of us do when we feel out of control is we stop taking care of ourselves and we work harder. And we try to do more of the thing that is already making us feel semi out of control. So we work harder, we do an extra load of laundry, we stay at the office until 7. We try to contain whatever it is we're feeling without really looking inside. You know, what's going on with me that I feel this bad? So what is happening is exactly the opposite of what needs to happen. I feel out of control, so I try now to exercise more control on myself, on my family, on my employees, on my colleagues, and I make myself feel even worse. You with me? Does this make sense? Okay, so how do you break that? You break it by learning the difference between being in control and being in charge. Okay, it's not just a subtle semantic difference, it's a really big thing. If you're trying to be in control of yourself, of other people, of outcomes, even in a meeting, here's what likely starts to happen. First, you quit breathing. Most women can say 10 complete sentences without taking a breath, so you quit breathing and that's okay. Now you begin to dig your heels in a little. This is that out of control, going to get back in control attitude. Your jaw gets a little tight. Your earlobes and your shoulder blades are close to touching. And this is the posture. I mean, you're shut down. You can't breathe, you can't feel your body, you can't feel your feelings, your brain is not going to work all that well, and you've stuck a big cork in the spiritual dimension of self. Now there's one other additional important piece, and that's the thought that goes through your mind when you are trying to get back in control. And the thought is, I know I am right. I know I'm right. That's your thumbnail search for when you're on the wrong track. Because when you know you're right, you are likely to be so wrong, it's scary. Now, for those of you who are like me, I'm right most of the time, this is a difficult concept to grasp. But when I know I'm right, I know I'm in trouble. Because it means you've stopped thinking. And if you aren't thinking, your ability to impact or to influence is pretty much zip. So that's what control does to us. Stops creative thinking, actually stops good thinking altogether. Tightens up your muscles, makes you not feel your feelings, and makes you so disconnected from the spiritual sense, say the greater good, as you can possibly be. It just is a terrible state. And that's what we do to ourselves when we're trying to make something happen. Yes?
Is that a first reaction or is it an ongoing one?
I think it's automatic and I think it's ongoing both.
Okay.
But I think most of us have a tendency
Well,
to...
I'm recognizing it, but I also recognize that that's the first reaction that I have would be to shut my brain.
So she's saying her first reaction is to shut down and just kind of stop her brain, but her second reaction is to start to think about it. That's good. And that's what we want to get to. When we have an automatic reaction, we want to be able to question it and say, where's that coming from and what can I do about it? But use as your thumbnail that sense that you're right, you know you need to back off.
It seems like it's tied to the fight or flight
It is?
instinct we all have.
It is. That's another good yes. So what's the opposite of that? What's the opposite of being in control or trying to be in control? The opposite of that is being in charge. So what you do if you're going to be in charge is you breathe. Everybody try it. Just take a really deep breath. You breathe, you relax, you let go. One of the hardest things for most of us is the concept of letting go, because it is the very sensation that creates for most of us the sense of being out of control. So why would you want to take a deep breath, relax, and let go if it's going to make you feel out of control? Because that's what happens to many of us. About 1 million years ago, back in the 70s, I went to a relaxation workshop to try to learn techniques to teach clients. It never occurred to me that maybe I needed to learn them for myself, except I'm in this workshop and I'm taking instructions, hopefully, to take home to Kansas City and to my office. And so we were going to practice relaxing. And I remember this man starting to give relaxation instructions. And the very first sensation I had when I was told to relax is I could feel my glutes tighten up. And then I could feel my jaw get kind of tight. My reaction to it was negative because it made me feel out of control. And I didn't want to have some total stranger telling me to let go of my control. But it was a heck of a learning experience for me because I saw what I was doing and how hard it was for me at that time in my life to really relax. When you release, relax, breathe, let go, what happens is the reverse of all of that shutdown. So, your mind is a little more accessible and a little more clear. You can feel your feelings, you can feel your body, you've opened up your sense of spiritualness, a connection to that which is out there other than you. And in that state of consciousness and awareness, you are now prepared to do what being in charge is doing, making choices, making decisions about your behavior. Making choices and making decisions about your behavior. That's what being in charge is about. And when you take that into any interaction with any other person or group, professional or personal, it means that you become much more powerful than you can ever be as a result of trying to be in control. It's very hard to do, so it's just something that you begin to be aware of. And when you back off from your need to control somebody's idea or input and simply be in charge of your own, what you do is encourage a dialogue. You hear the person, that person is more likely to hear you. Productivity, creativity begins to go up. And the same is true with anybody in your personal life. If you're really not trying to control the other person, that person begins to hear you in a different way because you hear that person in a different way. It's very freeing and very difficult to move in that direction. It's not an easy thing. So I'm saying that what most of us have been taught early on is how to control. I mean, think of the language that you probably heard growing up, like you were upset or angry or acting out a little bit, and the line is, well, get yourself under control. Get yourself under control. We're taught to be in control rather than to learn how to be in charge and what that distinction may be for most of us.